Hello, hello. So I am coming on with my good friend Shawn Wells, who I'm so excited is here in LA right now. And he is #1 supplement guy. I mean, formulator, right? You've formulated for so many different companies. So we're going to talk a lot about food. We're going to talk about keto. We're going to talk about intermittent fasting. We're going to talk about what that means in women. And if you have questions, please leave questions because we will be so more than happy to answer them. So, Shawn, give us a little quick background on who you are, why you're here.
Cool. I am known as the world's greatest formulator. I've formulated about 500 supplements.
Woo.
And I've patented about 10 ingredients, including things like T-cream and dynamine that are in lots of energy drinks and fat burners and pre-workouts. I patented some ketones, a form of berberine, which helps lower your blood sugar, a lot of different things, a lot of stuff in the works. Let's see, I have overcome obesity, anorexia, depression, suicidal thoughts, Hashimoto's syndrome, Epstein-Barr virus, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, a pituitary tumor. I've had 2 discs replaced in my neck, and just a lot of it was just from bullying and abuse of my own body as a result of it, and stressing and working 80 hours a week and all this stuff. So I've been working hard on biohacking, but also self-love.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you found a lot of that through food and nutrition and supplements that really helped you to overcome everything?
That's helped me biohack and helped me push past what my fatigue and low energy. But I think more recently, the meditation, the gratitude, I did a plant medicine journey with '𝐂𝐳𝐲, and like...
I did too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Anyway, that's really helped me, I think, put things in perspective that hurt people. Mm-hmm. And that even though I was bullied and abused at times growing up, that's just moving past it.
Yes, I love it. That's amazing. And just, Shawn has such an incredible heart, and the work that he's doing to really push health and education out in the world is purely just because he wants to help people and serve. And so I think that's such a beautiful journey that you're on, and I appreciate being able to walk it near you and next to you.
She's so sweet. I love this girl.
And I love the questions that are coming in. We definitely want to start to address some of them. But first I want to talk, so keto is a really big buzzword out in the world. And then there's a lot of talk of how it doesn't help with women as much, and that women shouldn't do keto, and these are just like surface level comments that you hear, right? And there's not like, what is the substance behind it? What does it mean when someone is saying that? Is it a trigger for someone because it didn't work for them? Like where does that break down, and how would keto differ for men and women?
The biggest thing I find is, so keto is the ketogenic diet, which means you're raising blood levels of ketones, and your body's using this alternate fuel source instead of glucose that your body is well adapted for and meant to use. You're meant to be dual fuel, use ketones, use glucose. It's just that in our Western diet world, we have high glycemic carbohydrate, we have a sedentary lifestyle, we're snacking all day long, our fibers are not nearly high enough in our plant foods, and we're eating ultra-processed food. We're not eating these resistant starches. Like, the rest of the world is eating whole food. The rest of the world is exercising. They slow down when they eat. They fast. They might go 1 meal a day. They might, go a day or 2 without eating that much. So it's just very different from our ultra-processed, hyper-palatable, high bliss point foods that we're having all day long. So it's just very different. But I do think keto is a great way to fix the broken metabolism. So for someone who's like athletic and lean like you, it's not really necessary. And I think probably about 20% of the population can eat whatever they want and stay lean. But if you're athletic, if you're eating well, it may not be a necessary step for you. But if you're someone that's, I believe, like more on the insulin resistant side of things, easily putting on weight, keto can be a tremendous tool for that. So, and that would include women. The difference is I've found that the more muscle mass you have, the more carb tolerant you are. So, and also the more active you are.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the more you move, like the more you're activating these GLUT4 receptors and what's called translocating the glucose into the cell. And so you're lowering blood glucose, you're helping insulin work better. So most people are not active enough. They don't have enough muscle mass, maybe especially women. I mean, it's just reality.
Yeah.
And men tend to be more active. Men tend to have more muscle mass. So for them, they can be in ketosis but have maybe 50 grams, 70 grams of carbohydrates a day. Women, I found, the more sedentary they are, the less muscle mass they have, the more it's like has to be towards like 20 grams. And they don't have as much flexibility with net carbs and all those kinds of things. So that can be some advice that I would give. If you're going to try it and you're a woman, I would go very strict. But certainly it helps to put on muscle mass. It helps to
lift.
Stay active.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. And so how long would you recommend someone, like if they are in a phase of like, okay, I do want to lose some fat and just rebuild within their health and their body and their gut, like how long would you say that being on a keto diet would help?
Indefinitely, but I think because once your metabolism is somewhat broken, it's hard really to fix it, honestly. And that's where I'm at personally, is like I can still easily put on weight, and so I just do it indefinitely. But I believe that after maybe 3 months, 6 months, you can get away from having a strict ketogenic diet and do what's called cyclical or targeted ketogenic dieting, and I actually do both. So that for me, it's actually very maintainable.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm playing sand volleyball in the heat in Dallas and I'm playing for 8 or 10 hours in a day, I'll have whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
I could have gummy bears and Coca-Cola or whatever, and it's kind of like that idea of like, not that that's a healthy thing, and I know I'm a dietitian, but like if that's like the healthiest thing is if you miss it and it's going to be a problem with you maintaining and having compliance, then just work it in. Try and reduce as much of it as possible, but just work it in, and like maybe over time you work it out.
Yeah.
But like don't beat yourself up over it. If you feel like you need that, then plan for it, schedule it.
Yeah.
You know, have like, you know, if you really love a Snickers bar, then once a week have a Snickers bar, have it around your workout, you know, so that you're active and the blood sugar doesn't have as much of an impact, and you know, and maybe in time it becomes one Snicker bar a month, and you know, whatever. Instead of like saying like, oh, I had a Snickers bar and it's all over.
Exactly.
You can't get into that all or nothing mentality. You need to just recognize where you're at, and that's what I try and do when I work with people, is meet them where they're at instead of like
that's the
beating
number
them
one
up.
thing. Exactly. And now saying you have to change everything and restrict everything, I think that's a really hard step for a lot of people to take and actually maintain consistency, and then that's where you see the yo-yo, or like, you know, for what I've heard, again, surface level, is that keto can mess up hormones in women, lose periods, all that kind of stuff, and so that's why a lot of women tend to move away from doing a strict keto.
Yes, so there's a lot of complexity to it. Here's part of the complexity, is that the ketogenic diet is not so much a diet as it is macros. So it's like 70 to 80% fat as calories. And you could be keto and eat all junk food.
Yeah.
You can be keto and be vegan. You can be keto and be carnivore. You can be keto and eat Mediterranean. And so to just generalize and say, oh, this is the keto diet, it doesn't really like make sense to me. So like there's very different approaches, and there'll be different health impacts to all those. Yes, like you're elevating ketones, and yes, you're using fat for fuel. I like to say that instead of you are what you eat, you burn what you eat. So like if you're mostly a carb eater, you're going to be efficient at being a a sugar burner. And if you're mostly like eating, meats and protein, then you're going to be efficient at converting that protein to glucose, called gluconeogenesis. And then if you're eating a lot of fat, then you become efficient at becoming a fat burner, lipolysis, and using that for fuel. And you see that with ketogenic athletes, etc. That's why they do really well on like endurance, especially like ultra endurance kind of competitions, because that's like a long-term fuel that's actually a lot more efficient than using like gels and goos. And if you're kind of optimized for fat burning, and you'll see like a lot of these guys are breaking records, like these 100-mile runs using the ketogenic diet. But going back to the female perspective and losing their periods and all that, there is a period of time where you are kind of settling in because you're upping your fat so much that your endogenous hormones are like being shaken up. Especially, again, it just seems to be more with women because, again, I just see they have less muscle mass. They tend to be more sedentary, and they also tend to eat like more like high carb, higher glycemic carb kind of diets. They don't get as much protein. So I just see like when they go on a ketogenic diet, it's just more of a radical shift than the way they've been eating. Whereas like a lot of guys tend to eat higher in meats, and even that clean bodybuilder diet that's low fat, low carb, and it's just essentially all protein, which isn't good. I don't recommend that. But that's a good transition, an easier transition to keto because they've been low carb.
Right, exactly.
So with women, there can be like a time where you're kind of settling in your hormones, which are cholesterol based, like the estrogen and testosterone, progesterone, all these are cholesterol based. So having more fat, there's going to be a period of time where that's adjusting. But I do think in time, I know a lot of women who actually got their periods back from doing keto and things like that. So I think the biggest thing that I say matters the most is I don't necessarily push keto. I think it's one of the best tools if you're metabolically broken. But the most important thing that we all do is that we do whole foods. And so that's where I'd start is try and get the sugar out. Try and get active. Try and do a little fasting. And for women, we can get into that in a second. Do intermittent fasting. Start there. And then eat whole foods, and then try keto. Like once you've dialed in these other kind of basic foundational things, then you can try like kind of an advanced step. But I think too many people just jump into a diet, a fad diet.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think the majority of the issue. It was the same thing like for my aspect when people the toe shoes came out, and then everyone starts running in toe shoes, and all of a sudden they're broken and they're like, these are crap. And it's like, you weren't supposed to go from running in super cushion to running in barefoot like that. Where was the progression in your body? Like, how did you even teach your body how to do that? So it's the same thing, and I like that you kind of draw that back in and you draw that connection. And I think that's where the gap is missing for people, is that we hear the stories of just people going straight keto and all of a sudden it's not working, right? Or their hormones are all screwed up now, rather than going from that progression of getting those whole foods, cutting out sugar more, and then trying it. So I think that's amazing that you kind of fill in the gap that way.
And there's some huge mistakes. People think they're on keto, but they're eating this bodybuilder type diet of low carb but also low fat. Their fat isn't high enough to actually be in ketosis, and they're stuck in this hangry, inefficient, gluconeogenic phase of like trying to just use protein for fuel. And I'll tell you, like, you're in a fog. You're not adapted to fat. You're not adapted to carbs. It's kind of like the worst place to be. And so a lot of people do this. They punish themselves. Again, especially people in fitness tend to eat this way. And it's just a horrible place to be. And one of the other things I see is, again, like going back to that net carbs, is they're eating like a lot of keto desserts and like this doesn't count, this fiber and this sugar alcohol and all. It does count. Like it does matter. So you need to, what I like to do is go as strict as possible the first maybe 3 months, get into keto adaptation, like where your body gets used to being in the state and using it for a fuel, and then start playing with net carbs, then start playing with cyclical or targeted. Like you have to like do things over time, going back to your point of progression.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like let your body adapt and then progress. Let it adapt and progress. So
that's awesome. Amazing. Let's try to answer a couple questions before we go into fasting.
Okay.
Oh,
wow.
man, I know. Okay, hold on. How do you trigger ketosis?
Okay. How do you trigger ketosis? By being in a ketogenic diet and having the macronutrient ratios that I was talking about. And you're obviously limiting carbohydrate intake, and then your body will shift over to using ketones for fuel.
Do you still have to be really mindful of like how, like if we're talking down to macros, then if someone's trying to lose fat, do they still have to go by, really making sure that they're not getting, they're limiting their overall calorie intake in order to create that?
I think the most important thing is not worrying about the calories and the macros. Initially, I would focus on the macros.
Okay.
And if you're eating whole food and you're eating keto, when ketones are elevated, your appetite levels actually drop. But when you're having ultra-processed food and junk food, even if they're keto, you can still override what's called satiety, your fullness. These foods are meant to do that. So that's where it goes back to, if you're eating whole food and you're doing keto, your body will naturally regulate itself and you'll eat less calories. But I think the most important thing to start out with is just literally trying to adapt to the ketogenic diet and letting your body adapt as well and not worrying about the calories.
And that's amazing. Because a lot of people just push, well, if you want to lose weight, it's just paying attention to the calories. It's not that complicated, it's not that hard, but it's like, yeah, but we have to be so mindful of the type of food, the nutrients that we're actually putting into the body, and that should be the most. And why are we guiding people to really just be so focused on counting calories?
The calories in, calories out people, and then if it fits your macros, and that's all garbage. Like you should definitely think about what's going in your body and having great food. Yes, 100%.
Okay, I love that. So someone said medicine is food, drop dairy. And in keto, the keto diet, I do see, like I remember I was getting meal plans one time and it was so heavy in cheese. I couldn't do it. It was so, personally for me, I noticed when I do cut out dairy and cheese, I feel better. I feel less upset in my stomach, all of those things. So can you speak into that? But it's so dependent on every single person. Like, not everyone should cut out dairy. I think some people respond to it well. So,
yeah, I think there's some genealogic differences in how we've evolved, and some people can probably deal with dairy better. But if you do follow a paleo diet, and certainly you've seen the paleo and keto community really cross over, that I think you're obviously not having dairy. Not that all dairy is created equal. There is raw dairy. There also is full fat, like heavy whipping cream, versus having lactose, like in lower fat. Like I definitely recommend not using skim milk or anything, but I agree. Like a lot of people don't deal with dairy well and shouldn't have it.
Yeah. So you don't like push that as a heavy fat to have when you're doing.
No, but for some people they can have like heavy whipping cream and full fat cheeses. Again, I wouldn't recommend the skim based, like that's again more processed or they're so
but
the
like
more raw
ghee and stuff like that. Yeah. I have had ghee before and I feel fine with that. So that makes sense. What is a resistant starch?
That's a great question. Things like that are starch based, like think of potatoes, rice, bananas are starches, right? And we think of them as high glycemic, that will increase blood sugar and therefore insulin. But when they're in their raw state, like if I was to eat a raw potato, it's a resistant starch, meaning it's digestive resistant and it won't increase your blood sugar. It'll also feed the gut as a prebiotic fiber. So if I was to eat raw potatoes, it would have no impact. It would be a ketogenic food, essentially. I can have carbs, like in keto, and I can have a potato. Yeah. It's just that when we heat it up, when we mash it, and all that kind of stuff, that turns into a highly metabolizable starch that's basically like having table sugar to your body. And same with like if you have green bananas, it's a resistant starch. It's only when they're more ripe that they become sweeter and they become metabolizable. And, you know, steel cut oats versus like rolled oats that are, you know, hydrated and hot. Or, you know, all the stuff like rice. If actually rice, the more raw it is, the more al dente it is, and the more cold it is, the more resistant it is. So if you're keto and if you were to have sushi and you did want some rice, you know, you can actually have it really cold, and it's a lot better than having like hot, sticky, kind of gooey rice. You know,
that makes sense.
So
So when it tastes better, it's not as good for you. Is essentially what you're saying.
Essentially.
Dang it. How does ketosis affect your brain function?
Amazing. So that's one of the biggest reasons like a lot of executives might use it, people that aren't necessarily looking to lose weight. And that's one of the reasons like when you do fasting, like people talk about the clarity and you know, for several thousands of years people have done fasting for that spiritual, mental clarity in all religions. And it's one of those things that you allow your body to rest and detox with like cellular autophagy and all this kind of stuff. But also you're increasing ketone levels way higher than what you can do on the ketogenic diet, by the way. And your brain loves ketones, especially if you're insulin resistant. Like a lot of people that are overweight, obese, that they get like this boom rush of energy, and that's where keto is so great. Like if you are overweight, like you felt like you've been on this energy like black cloud for a long time, and then all of a sudden like that cloud gets lifted and you're like, whoa. Like, so it's not just weight loss. That's where a lot of people, like when you're insulin resistant, you get into this insufficient cellular energy state, and you're just not getting enough glucose as fuel, and you're not making enough ATP. So like when you're doing keto or you're fasting, that you can feel that energy come back. But that's only, again, like for people like me that have been obese or, you know, that are potentially insulin resistant, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very cool. I love this. Oh my God, your friend is a godsend. Can you give his full name, and does he write a book?
Okay.
So we can dive into that right now.
Okay. It's Shawn Wells, ShawnWells. I have a website, ShawnWells.com. I've got a fasting guide on there, and we do some challenges and things like that. I do have a book coming out called The Energy Formula, and it will be all about biohacking your body. It'll include things like fasting, like keto, the supplements I use, all that kind of stuff, and it should be very helpful. And if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm at @ZoneHalo, ZoneHalo.
Yes. When is the book supposed to come out?
This year.
What's the difference between the Atkins diet and keto?
That's a good question. So the initiation phase of Atkins is essentially a ketogenic diet. The maintenance phase of Atkins is less restrictive, and you can have higher levels of protein, which can get into like a little bit more gluconeogenesis, and it's more just kind of low carb. But that's okay. Like, whatever, to me, like whatever is maintainable to you is what matters. This needs to be a lifestyle, not 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And it needs to be something that you can do over time. That's why I do like cyclical and targeted, and I don't call them cheat days anymore. It's just planned carb days. And I have like cake, and I have this, like on 2 meals on Saturday when I'm going out with my friends, I just have what I want. Or like if I'm at a wedding, I have what I want. Maybe the next day I fast a little bit, or I'm back into keto, or whatever. It's like I don't beat myself up over it. I don't call it a cheat, because that's kind of messed up too. Like that makes it like you're being naughty. Yeah. And I'm trying to enjoy life and live life. So. Yeah,
exactly. I love that Shelly was answering some questions. Just went dairy free and my sinuses cleared up in 3 days. Wow, can finally breathe again. That's amazing, because we need our nose to breathe. New green bananas are better for us. Yeah, but they're so much better when they're yellow. Calorie restriction versus fasting. Can you talk about that?
Different. Caloric restriction, any diet is going to be restricting calories. I don't like the idea of restricting calories indefinitely. There is something called caloric restriction, where you're supposedly improving longevity by indefinitely restricting calories. But that doesn't make sense to do to your body. Like your organs will actually atrophy, your thyroid will slow, your metabolism will slow, because it's like literally putting, like, I don't know if you have a phone that has like battery saver mode, right? Like where, you know, the screen is less bright and it turns off like some of the, you know, functionality and the notifications, and like, is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it doing everything optimally? No.
Yeah.
So like, I don't actually believe in doing caloric restriction. I think over time, that's not something to do just chronically.
Yeah.
So I don't like the idea of that. And I like the idea of fasting, intermittently. I think that's healthy for everyone.
Yeah.
The question is whether extended fasts are okay for everyone. And again, I think men get the pass. It just seems to work easily for men.
It does. We did a fast. He did 5 days, like nothing. I did 3, which I was proud of myself for.
Amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, and I felt great. I missed food. I didn't need it.
Right.
And it was a good like brain switch for me to be like, oh, I'm not hungry.
It's a huge brain switch. That's actually, there's like, again, ketosis, cellular autophagy, increased stem cells, all this kind of stuff that happens with fasting that's cool. But I think one of the most amazing things is people tell you that, oh, I'd be dead. I would be on the floor. I'll have no energy. There's no way that's possible. Like, you'd be in the hospital.
Yeah.
It's not true. It is not true at all. Like, and to be empowered and see that you're not dependent on food, you're not like wholly attached to food, and to get like 2 or 3 hours back a day that you can like create.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can gratitude journal and you can meditate, and like all of a sudden you have all this extra time because you're not focused on food. And it's just a nice mental shift sometimes to not feel like your whole day revolves around food. Like it's almost like the pillars in your day, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snack, and dessert, and I need to eat this, and I got to prepare this, and I got to clean this, and you know, it's like, it's just so much. So to have that break from food, I feel like is super empowering. Again, it goes back to like that spiritual clarity that all these religions, these great philosophers, like, you know, thousands of years have been doing this stuff. So like it improves the power of prayer in almost like every religion, like, because you're just clear, like you're not focused on that stuff like that we get so tied into, almost like cell phones and our lifestyles, and to just kind of pull back, it's nice. But
yeah, definitely.
I think fasting, I really recommend that a 24-hour fast should be okay for everyone to experiment with. But I think when you get into longer fasts with women, if you're already amenorrheic, if you're not having your period, I would recommend that you don't do it, like past 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I also recommend, if you're less than 14-15% body fat, to be very careful, because your body is probably on the edge of being amenorrheic if it's not already. And this is just premenopausal women that I'm talking about. Postmenopausal, you can do whatever you want at that point. But your body wants to be in a fertile state where hormones are running optimally, that you can reproduce. I mean, that's why we're here in terms of evolution, right? So like, if you take that away and you are fasting for several days, your body's like, whoa, and so you might lose your period. There might be hormonal issues. So that's what I recommend, is just be careful, like if you're in that sub 15% body fat range.
Yeah, I think that's important. I know there's just so many people speaking in the world nowadays, and a lot of people say, oh, well, people just intermittent fast because it's restricting their calories, and so that's why it works for them.
People just, okay, got it.
At least in the fitness world, that's what a lot of people...
That's the calories in, calories out simplicity.
I know.
And like I was just telling you, so with carbs, there's resistant starches, there's Coca-Cola and sugar, there's fiber, and then when we look at fats, there's inflammatory vegetable oils, There's MCTs, which uniquely get metabolized by the liver and turn into ketones. And there's short-chain fatty acids that feed the gut, like butyrate. And there's like proteins that are amino acids that are quickly absorbed, and then more slowly absorbed proteins that need to get broken down by enzymes. So to just say calories in, calories out, or if it fits your macros is like nonsense to me. Like, it's complete nonsense. So going back to intermittent fasting, is it just calories in, calories out? I mean, there's definitely like an equation to that. I get that, like in terms of like physics and thermodynamics, but it's so much more complicated than that. Like, you're actually suppressing insulin, and therefore growth hormone goes up. You're getting into more autophagy. Ketones are getting elevated, which affect appetite. So it's just more complicated than that.
Yes. Oh, do you guys both do a 48-hour fast, the second Sunday of each month?
Yes, we are starting that now.
Oh, amazing. I love that, Shelly. Maybe we should jump on board. I know Dom would love it. He just randomly fasts all the time. He's like, oh, I haven't eaten today, so I'll just... But for women, like, what I did appreciate when I did it, I did like mid-month, like my mid-month from when I would have my period to when I would start. So it was kind of like fell right in the middle. What do you recommend? Like, because I hear it shouldn't be right before you have your period, during your period, or right after.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Because that's kind of the most, ovulation, obviously. So, like, you want to be primed. Your body wants to be primed for the ability to have a child.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't interfere with that cycle too much. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Okay, great. And I feel great. I felt great, and it just happened to be, like, again, guys, like, I went the full 3 days and I was fine. It was like, I just missed food. And that was it. I wanted that emotional desire to, like, eat. But,
yes. Yes,
but I wasn't hungry. Like, I had water.
There's a huge
and
connection
I was fine.
to food. And it's kind of nice to sort through that and to know that, like, when you say you're starving, you're not.
Yes.
And to know that, like, it is built into your day, and that, like, a lot of things revolve around it. And it's actually interesting if you have the willpower to go out to eat with people but not eat, and tell them that you're fasting. And it's really empowering, and it'll really enlighten you to how much you're attached to food.
I know.
I mean, watch commercials, think about it.
Yeah. Oops. Let's see what else people are saying. How do I kickstart metabolism? Mother of two, obese, always tired, feeling lost, currently juicing.
Ugh, that's what I'm talking about. So the juicing is literally like basically giving yourself sugar. I mean, it's like, it's got nutrients in it, but it's kind of like having Coke with nutrients. So I don't recommend, I don't know exactly what you're juicing. I shouldn't say that. It could be a lot of vegetables, but people tend to like sweeten their juices, like carrots and apples and whatever, and it ends up being like sugar. So I would recommend that you do try a ketogenic diet if you've reduced sugar, if you're exercising, if you're doing some intermittent fasting, if you're eating whole foods, then try the ketogenic diet.
Yeah. As far as the intermittent fasting, like, what are, like, how many hours do you think for women to be, like, on and off?
Yeah, I mean, you're just starting with the 12 and 12 is a big deal. Like, to just, have a couple hours before you go to sleep and a couple hours after you get up is a huge deal. But then to go from there to a 16 and 8, I think is pretty good, where you're going 16 hours without eating and then 8 hours eating.
And you think that's, like, again, for women when we're on periods or anything,
that's
it's
maintainable,
fine?
All the time.
Okay, cool. What about all the fat adaptation and enzymes your body has to produce that take weeks in order to be a full fat adapted, etc.?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's adaptations that are taking place in a week, 2 weeks. That's definitely where you're starting to get into ketosis is a couple weeks if you've never done it before. But, I mean, adaptations are taking place 6 months in, a year in. Like, your body works that way with epigenetics. So, it can take a while. So be patient.
Yeah. One of the things I was talking with friends not that long ago about creatine supplementation. And Can we talk about that?
Sure. Like, what about it exactly?
One of my friends has been like experimenting with it and seeing like how he's feeling and everything, and he's like been feeling absolutely amazing. And my other dietitian friend has been like reading more research on it and kind of wanting to experiment with it as well herself.
Okay. Yes, I recommend that everyone use creatine. The most simple form is creatine monohydrate. It's very cheap and easy to use. It increases strength. It protects lean body mass. But actually, and most people know about it for power, and especially like with sprinting and powerlifting and things that involve like that energetic creatine phosphate pathway. But we're seeing that it is a buffer, and it actually has whole body impact in terms of it actually protects your bone, protects brain. It's a methylator and protects your DNA. It's anti-aging. It's anti-sarcopenia, so it's protecting that muscle as well, like as we age. So I think it's a really great nutrient that everyone should be on. There's over 1,000 studies on it, so it's well researched. It comes naturally in food, like especially in beef. It's hard to get enough the way we eat, so whether you're vegan or carnivore or anything, I definitely recommend taking creatine.
Amazing. Someone asked a great question on that. She doesn't eat meat, so can she do this diet?
Ketogenic diet? Mm-hmm. Yes, you can do it vegan or vegetarian. There's a book out called Ketotarian. I believe that someone's written that, but it's a lot harder. It's not easy. I mean, but the vegan diet in general is not easy, so you're certainly limiting food choices and selection, but you can do it for sure. It's feasible. Again, it's just macros.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One of my friends is doing the carnivore diet right now. Mm-hmm. She went from like vegan to carnivore.
That's a huge shift. I mean, you know what? I see benefits of both. I get why people do both, and I think people can thrive. I think where carnivore is a zero-carb ketogenic diet, essentially. Mm-hmm. So it's probably the easiest way to get into keto. And I know a lot of people that have gut or autoimmune issues really do well on a carnivore diet. Mm-hmm. Carnivore is very hard to maintain, though. Like long term. So I think doing it for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days might be a nice reset for your body, and then going on from there. But there's a lot of anti-nutrients, there's a lot of toxins and things. We always hear the bad news about meat, but there's a lot of stuff that's in the plant food supply that's not so great either. There's lectins and gluten and phytates and Roundup and.
I know. Well, is that why you would recommend organic?
Definitely organic if you're eating vegetables, and then look into some of these anti-nutrients and some of these foods that might be an issue. But,
well, I did want to talk because there's this account that is driving me nuts.
Okay.
I'm not going to say the account, but she is saying glyphosate doesn't matter. Our body naturally clears toxins itself, and we can't do anything. Like all we're doing by saying organic, all this stuff is fear mongering and blah blah blah.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
I know.
So, wow, there's a lot to that. So toxins that you're taking in, does your liver potentially clear toxins? Yes. But is it always trying to clear toxins from the air, from our diet, from our water, from our bodies? Like it's actually, we store a lot of these toxins. They're not just automatically cleared. We store them in our tissues, especially like in fat tissue, which is one of the reasons why when you start dieting, like you can feel like kind of low on energy. It's not just the calories. It can be that you're clearing out some toxins from your fat tissue and from your liver, etc. So to reduce that toxic load is what you need to do. And certainly glyphosate is carcinogenic. That's been demonstrated repeatedly. It literally promotes cancer. So how do you know where someone's at in terms of if they're eating a high glycemic diet, if they're already stressed, if they're, having, if they're not exercising and they're having glyphosate? It's like, it's just, why would you add that in the equation?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Are there things that we can take to get rid of glyphosate, or is it just over time really working on whole foods and getting better nutrients within the body?
I would prefer that.
Okay.
But the more you exercise, the healthier your immune system is, the more that you're having cleaner water, that you're de-stressed. Again, it's like there's something called allostatic load, which is basically your body's ability to deal with stress, and it's like a bucket. And when the more positive things you do to mildly stress your body, the bigger that bucket gets. It's called like hormesis, like when you can adapt and get stronger, like when you work out.
Yeah.
But when you're just overwhelmed with stress, that bucket gets smaller. So you don't want to like keep throwing things like, you know, like that in the bucket. Like think of the positive stresses like good work stress, or taking on new challenges, or learning a new language, or working out at the gym. Those are you stresses.
Yeah.
The other things are called distress.
Yeah, amazing. Though being vegetarian for weeks caused mood swings and lethargy, so I tried to be reducitarian and eliminate red meat from the diet. Tried 24-hour fasting, no energy, didn't hit the gym.
Okay, reducitarian's a new one on me. I like it.
Just
That's a
depends
cool
on how
term.
you're, test it out with your body, just like, you know.
There's no one way.
Yeah. Been keto since 2009, and though all the reading and research, my opinion is to do it as a lifestyle and stick to it. No point having breaks very often because that means you can't adapt to.
Okay.
Very cool. Perimenopausal women we talked about. Will intermittent fasting or 3-day fast still be okay?
For perimenopausal, that's tough. Meaning that's like they're in the transition. So that's, for people that don't know, premenopausal, postmenopausal, perimenopausal, transitioning, hot flashes, things like that. That's tough. Like I would see how it works with your body, but chances are that might exacerbate hot flashes and things like that. When you do a ketogenic diet, when you do fasting, like that might kind of worsen it. So
yeah, so maybe more of like the 12-12 intermittent fast right now, and whole foods, cut out sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
Walk, work out, drink water, not drink. Thoughts on alkaline water?
That's tough. I'm kind of back and forth on that one. I think your body does a good job at regulating pH, but might be back to that kind of allostatic load thing where just if you're constantly eating acidic foods, it might be difficult on your body to try and compensate for all that. And so it would be good, maybe that's where the plant-based diet could be good at kind of reducing that acidic load. But your body does adapt. It just depends on how stressed you are and other things. It's just tough to say for me.
Okay.
The science really, there's no like compelling science on it yet. It's a lot of hype, but I see some logic to some degree. But it doesn't deserve like its own diet. I don't think you need to live that way.
Cool.
If you see an alkaline diet, essentially it ends up being like Tom Brady's diet. It's like, it's vegan, it's whole foods, it's, things like that. But, so it's higher quality nutrients.
Is there a vegan source creatine?
Yes, you can get a fermented creatine. So yes, it's possible.
Does the carnivore diet have a negative effect for your liver?
Carnivore diet? No, that is not true. We're meant to be carnivore, vegan, or anything in between, omnivore. Like, it's just, again, goes back to whole food. Our bodies are easily meant to deal with either of these scenarios. The only thing that's changed in the last 50 years is we've become consumers of ultra-processed food. It was never a problem to be eating animals
100%.
or eating plants.
But with carnivore, are you getting all of the nutrients, I guess, is the question that we get when we eat the rainbow within our fruits and veggies?
You do. One concern is fiber, but your gut converts over to using butyrate for fuel. This is how animals do it. And then if you're eating like nose to tail carnivore, yes, I think you get all your nutrients.
Yeah.
You
but if you're not eating the organs and stuff like that,
right?
Then
If you're just eating muscle meats, then that's not going to be enough. Like, and you can get the bone broth and get collagen and certain amino acids and the connective tissue, and the organs have the fat soluble vitamins and all those different things. So definitely, if you're going to do carnivore more than a month, I would say, then you need to eat kind of nose to tail.
Cool. That's good information right there. Autophagy, as you mentioned earlier, is the best way to reduce toxins.
100%.
Yeah.
100% agree with that. A lot of the other detoxing thing is kind of BS. That's the best way.
Does charcoal really work to rid bodies of toxins?
It does. It does bind up toxins. It does work. But you have to be careful not taking it around other supplements and medications, because it will make those inert too. So you don't want to have it near that time.
Okay. Can't sleep on keto.
There is a transition. Again, I think just give your body a chance to transition past that. I think, in a month, everything tends to settle in. So.
Keegan water. So this goes back right to that alkaline type water, all of that. I had a friend, she's more on like the Chinese medicine kind of way, and she says there's a time and a place depending on your body and the seasons and all of that kind of thing.
I think if you're someone that's eating a lot of acidic foods, it could be a good way to counterbalance. Or if you were in a hyper stress state, maybe it would be a good counterbalance. But I think most of the time your body is doing very well to deal with that, so you don't need it.
Cool.
Especially when it's $8 a bottle.
I know, it is really expensive. Well, that was, I guess I could see then why maybe in places like LA, when it's high stress, go, or New York, and so people are in that way more stressed out state, so having alkaline water might help. Maybe. Possibly. How important is it to eat after a workout, 6 a.m. workout, but I like to intermittent fast? I do too.
That's a great question, and I used to fast. My window would be around lunchtime. I would pick up, but I would work out first thing in the morning, like this person. But I found that just having a protein shake for me, right after my workout, I started including that, and I started recovering better. And so for me, that works. It depends what your goals are and how intensely you're working out, and if you're trying to gain muscle. I think if you're just trying to lose weight, and you're not working out very intensely, then pick it up at noon. But I think if you have goals of putting on lean body mass, you have to kind of think through getting enough protein and maybe that optimal anabolic window and that kind of stuff. So.
What about the concept of eating with the sun? So, and to really
mention that. Yeah. So there's a guy, Dr. Sachin Panda, that all his data revolves around their circadian rhythm, and it's your sleep-wake cycle, and it goes with the sun essentially. So I agree fully that we should eat during the daylight hours. So if you're going to do a 16 and 8, a good window could be 10 to 6, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. is kind of your eating window, and that's during the daylight hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And one of my dietitian friends, she's really of that mindset as well. It's all about insulin. I've been diabetic for 36 years and began using an insulin pump for about 2.5 years ago, and had literally reduced my insulin usage by 70% and lost over 30 pounds and over 4 inches in my waist. I'm a fit 40-year-old male.
5'11", now 175.
Whoa.
So lean and strong. That's amazing. So it is all about insulin. I do agree. That's a massive fact. I will say that insulin is hugely important for if we're insulin resistant, we're definitely in a state of faster biological aging and a higher tendency towards all disease states. So controlling insulin resistance is massive, and that's where keto can be helpful. But again, it's mostly because we're so broken metabolically in the West. And this is why in the rest of the world they can have carbs and eat all these things, because they're not as broken as we are. They're not getting served up garbage all day long. So
seriously, all the time. Okay, B12.
definitely recommended take methylcobalamin, the active form of B12.
For everyone?
Everyone.
All right. You heard it here. What other supplement is like a must? Like
my favorite, so going back to insulin resistance, my favorite one is called berberine.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very similar to the drug metformin, which has been shown to maybe add an additional 2 years to your life.
Wow.
So taking berberine is kind of the natural version of that. And it's a glucose disposal agent that increases something called 𝐂𝐴MP. And it's also been shown to improve inflammation, dyslipidemia, again, insulin resistance, be anti-aging, etc. So I recommend everyone take berberine.
Amazing. So we have creatine, vitamin B, and berberine so far.
Okay.
Vitamin D?
Vitamin D3, 5,000 IUs every day.
Okay.
K2, recommend taking that with it. Prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics, which is butyrate. I definitely like feeding gut health. Let's see what else. There's something called 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, which sounds like crazy, but just remember methylfolate. It's the active form of folate. There's a lot of issues that people have genetically at converting folic acid to the active form. There's like 4 enzymatic steps. And so someone may show enough folic acid in their diet, in their blood, but they're not getting the active form in their tissues and therefore anemic. So I recommend taking this active form of B12, methylcobalamin, and then methylfolate for your folic acid. Those are both tremendous. I love collagen. I think you should get like 20 to 40 grams. Like some people are taking a couple capsules or like a little teaspoon. I like a ton of collagen, 20 to 40 grams. That's why, you'll see like people's like joints feel like, I don't need to get that surgery now, or their skin tightens up and they'll just feel dramatically better. Collagen is like a third of the protein in your body. 𝐂𝐭 means like glue, essentially. It's like the connective tissue. So your skin, hair, nails, your gut lining, your bone, tendons, ligaments, so all that stuff's made up of collagen. So it's just as important to get that in as like your muscle meat or whatever you're eating the protein to feed your muscles. So
amazing. I feel like I was going to ask. Okay, so with all these supplements, so here's my problem. I have a hard time sticking to them all. Like I have them all.
Yeah. So
I just like don't always take them all,
right.
And I'm not as consistent.
Compliance
Yes.
is massive. So I would look at the formats. Like, is it because you need to take it 2 or 3 times a day? Is it because there's so many capsules? Then I would look at something where you can maybe get like an all-in-one, or you can get like a powder that you can mix up, or you can get a liquid or something.
All right, I like it. I'll
Simplify.
start looking. 200. We should probably end this soon. We've been talking for a while. We didn't even realize. 275-pound middle-aged woman abruptly stops drinking, chewing tobacco, eating meat and sugar. Are there health issues that they should be concerned about?
Middle-aged man. I mean, I think that's a great transition. I'm not against red meat per se, but I think a lot of our red meat is not good. It just depends on your source. But I do think that stopping drinking, chewing tobacco, all that stuff is amazing. Like yes, there'll be a difficult transition for a while when the body's like fiending for those chemicals, but it's definitely, now's the time to start. So it's great.
Thoughts on melatonin and magnesium for sleep?
I love both. I recommend both. Just don't go too high in the melatonin. Like there's a huge range. Start low, like 0.3 milligrams.
Amazing. And Shelly answered the question about collagen, BioTrust. Okay.
Awesome.
Specific times of day better to take supplements over others?
I think with your meals is ideal. I recommend twice a day. It should be easier if you got them in your cabinet. Like either take it, like I do it, before I leave for the gym, like breakfast time ish, first thing in the morning, and then before I go to bed or with dinner. Like depending on like what's easier for you, but I kind of like that space and twice a day.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay. Oh, turmeric. It's great.
Love it. Curcumin.
Yeah.
Also, like turmeric is the spice, curcumin is the active, super anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer. Like, it's been shown to do all kinds of things. Antioxidant, it's incredible. I definitely recommend taking curcumin, but look for bioavailability enhanced versions, like a liposomal one, like Mariva, or there's one called curcumin.
Oh wow, I didn't even realize that there's all these questions coming in here. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll just have to have another chat soon.
We can do it.
We've gone through so much information on this live. Thank you so much, Shawn. That was incredible. Shawn Wells over here. Yes, I will save it, and I'll tell you where you can find it after that. And go check out his page, Zone Halo. He will also be having a book coming out pretty soon. I'll talk about all this on my stories too, so that you guys can just like find his little tag and click it and go follow, so that so it makes it way easier for you. So many good things that we dove into, really breaking down the science and making it easy and digestible for people to take in. And I think that's what's most important, because a lot of the people will say a lot of superficial things, but it's like, where's the depth? And then is that depth over people's head?
Agreed.
So I really appreciate the way you break it down.
We align on the science, and we align on the approach. I think meeting people where they're at, trying to break down crazy information, make it simple, but still making it true. So,
exactly. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you for asking so many amazing, incredible questions. I appreciate you all, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye guys.